And that was a pattern that we looked at last week quite a lot. So I wanted to ask if you were able to observe that in yourself. and if you were, just say something about that. Just say this is Judy. Anyone able to sort of see that particular pattern?
Specifically the hip depression?
Yeah, specifically.
I'm not sure.
What did you know?
For me, I mean, I'm constantly there. I don't know if it's height, my height, looking up a lot, or just being at the gym on a machine and the monitors are higher. When I'm working with people, if I'm on the floor with them, I'm like that.
Okay.
On the computer.
Yeah.
It's really everything that I do.
You really notice it's like across the board.
Right.
Yeah. That's a good observation. I would say that's true. I mean, not that I'm ever with you on any of those activities, but I can just see you sitting. Let's just clarify the pattern we're looking at. Basically, just as a quick review, Alexander observed that every time he spoke, he was a Shakespearean actor, and he noticed that every time he spoke, he had a pattern of compressing his neck muscles and bringing the weight of his head down on his spine. And did you see what I just did? I just went into a pattern of compression. And he just noticed that he did this every time he spoke. But when he was on stage doing the Shakespeare monologues, that's when he really exaggerated it. And it was all in preparation to do something. That is, he had an audience out there, and he felt he had to suck in breath, pull his head back and, get the lines out like that. So, he has this great interest in the head-neck relationship as the initiating factor, like the interference of the free-floating, poised quality of the head on the spine starts a whole pattern of compression through the body. And that's what he discovered. He saw that every time he pulled in, shortened, contracted, diminished his stature, it started with the imbalance of his head on his spine. And Alexander went through 9 years of trial and error working this thing out. I mean, he didn't come up with this immediately. But he did, when he noticed this pattern, remember we talked about this last week, what was his response to noticing this pattern? Or what is our response when we notice something that we don't particularly think is good for us? What do we do? What do we do in response to that?
We try to correct it.
We what?
Try to correct it.
Exactly. So, in other words, if you were slumping, all of you go into a little slump, and by the way, as you're slumping, notice your head-neck relationship. Okay, so can any of you sort of feel how your neck is perhaps jutted forward, and these muscles through the base of the skull, these muscles tend to get very tight, and it brings the base of the skull down, and the neck juts forward. So do you see this? Yeah. This is what Alexander called pulling the head back and down, and it's very related to compression through the system. So we're going to go over this again, but if you were then to correct this slump, go ahead and correct it. And really give it your best shot. So what is that like, and how long could you hold it before you were slumping again? What do you think?
Consciously, like a couple of minutes, I suppose, but without thinking about it. If I were on a computer or doing some other thing, I would immediately go down.
Right. Okay. And that seems to be what happens with us, right?
You're right about computers.
I'm sorry?
You're right. Well, on a computer, we all...
Yeah. But it's not just computers. It's like we just have this sort of way of of living like this. Okay, so let's go back to this area that, so let me just say something about the overview of the Alexander technique. It's about noticing your habitual responses, and that's what Alexander called awareness. Just noticing. Not just your habitual responses, but actually how they show up in the body. In the form of compression, holding your breath, tightening, pulling in. And then learning to stop the impulse to push out of what you're seeing, or feeling, or noticing. So awareness, and then what he called inhibition, which actually means stopping. Stopping the going for a change, the pushing. And also there's an aspect of actually stopping the habit itself, which we're going to be looking into here. And then the third part of this sort of overview of this work is what he called direction, which is learning to make change by letting go. By letting go rather than pushing. So that's sort of the big kind of broad strokes. Awareness of our habitual patterns of interference. And the premise is that we're all very naturally expansive and upright and easy in ourselves. That's kind of our birthright as human beings. That's how we enter the world. And even, you know, I'm involved in meditation practice in Buddhism, and in Buddhism they talk a lot about Buddha nature. That is a sort of intrinsic quality of being awake. Like the Buddha, right? That's our intrinsic quality as human beings. You know, I buy it. You may or may not. But to me it makes a lot of sense. And there's a kind of psychophysical quality to being present, which is not being tight. It's not being held. It's not being tense. It's not being pulled down. Right? Makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah. So basically, we're looking at how we interfere. And this particular interference, the head-neck relationship, we have a lot of interest in that. Okay, so I'm going to ask you now to stand up. And I'll periodically ask you to just stretch or walk around the room. It's about awareness of your movements in your life, your very basic, mundane, everyday movements. Sitting, standing, walking, bending, talking on the phone, sitting at the computer, playing tennis, whatever you do. It's noticing that. But it's not a series of exercises. Yeah. It's a little hard for us to, we're kind of oriented towards that. I actually need to look in one more folder and see if I find more sheets. Yes, here they are. Okay, great. You know what I want to do is teach you the anatomy of the head-neck relationship so that you start to have some sort of way of seeing it in your mind's eye a little bit. But we'll look at this and then we'll talk a little bit more about it. Okay, so go ahead and pass that around. Great. And I don't want to get too technical. This might feel a little technical to you, but I really think it's useful. So we'll slog through this part of the class.
The one short one.
Which one?
The
first one, here you go.
The first one, yeah. I think you kind of one short of
Oh, here, here's,
Oh, you didn't count it.
No,
More
here.
comment.
I didn't count it, just yes.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, you need another one? Okay. All right,
How
let's
many,
see.
there's three?
There's 3 sheets. What did you get there?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3. All right. So let's see. Let's look at this. And this is this one. Let's all be on the same page, so to speak. In this particular sheet, we're looking at the cervical spine, the neck spine, and we're looking at the top vertebra, which is called the atlas, which is sitting on the top of the neck spine. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is, on your own body, feel this point here, which is the bottom of the cervical spine. So you'll feel it because it sticks out. Okay, have you all located that? All right. Okay, so then go up, continue to feel your cervical vertebra, and they're delicate vertebra, and you're only feeling the back of your vertebra. So remember that there's a front and there's sides, okay? Now you're getting to the base of your skull, I bet. Have you found that yet? Okay. But actually, let's feel it this way. So let's have a sense of the 3-dimensional vertebra that move behind the jaw. Okay, and then if you actually get your fingers in your lower ears, but not so tight that you can't hear me, okay? And you imagine your fingers could touch, that's where your head rests on the atlas, which is this top vertebra that you see here. Okay, so do you see how the atlas just comes down right like that? Okay, and now let's look at this sheet. Number 1. Thank you. 5. Okay. So here you see the atlas from a bird's eye view. Do you see that? Looking down at it.
So you go on the left or the right?
Well, I
Says the
believe.
one on the right says from above.
Yeah, from below.
Oh, yes.
Left and
Okay, so the one on the right is from above, right, looking down. So now take a look at this. Do you see how this picture, this atlas, sits on top of the vertebra? Do you see that? Okay. So that sits right there. By the way, this little piece here, you see it? It's called the dens of axis. It's the second vertebra. Do you see this? Look at this right here. Look at this sheet. So we're all on the same page. Okay? And Judy, can you see? Okay. So this down here is actually the second vertebra. Okay?
under the atlas.
Okay. The axis, it's called the axis. The axis, take a look at this, moves through the atlas so that this top piece right here is actually the top of the second vertebra. Is that clear? I hope I'm not confusing you, okay? Okay. This piece, right here, this is the axis, which is the second vertebra. And you can see it right here. This piece here is this.
I see.
So it moves through the atlas. Right, and then the atlas is sitting on top, okay? And actually, could you just scoot back so Judy can see? Just take your chair a little further back there. Okay. Okay,
So
now,
on this,
yeah?
on this diagram here,
Uh-huh.
is this dotted line showing, is that the space that this is coming up
Through, yes. This is the space that this is
But is
coming
it
out
filling
of.
all of this space or just kind of this?
No, You can actually
Right,
see here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah?
And there's a spinal cord coming up and out through
Yes, through
the
here.
top of there? Is that-
Yeah,
okay.
through here. Now, I mean, I'm not sure how it's sort of, now this is a really good question, we could find out. But yes, the spinal cord comes up through here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what happens to it.
Yeah, me too. Because when you said it, I was like, Okay, so now, look at this. This picture now shows the skull and its relationship to the atlas and the axis. Okay? Now I'm going to come around and show you this because it's a little hard to see it. You see how this is the bottom of the skull and it has these two little bony protuberances. Do you see those?
Yeah.
Okay, those bony protuberances sit on the atlas here. Okay, so do you see that? Okay. Is this where, oh, you're really picking up on this. You're good at this. Oh, you're missing a sheet. Never mind. Okay. Okay, here we go. So this is the bottom of the skull. It has these two, they're called occipital condyles. They rest in the grooves of the atlas right here. The atlas are like little cups that the bony protuberances of the skull rest on. Okay, is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you get that?
These two.
Yes, exactly. And then you can see it nicely here, like in here, and they really are. It doesn't show so much here, but you can really see this as like little grooves, right? That actually, and it's such a poised, beautiful relationship, right? Here's the occipital condyles that rest right in the grooves of the atlas. Boom, boom, like that. Yeah.
Here, point just to.
Okay. So here are the occipital condyles, the little blips of the skull that rest in the grooves of the atlas, those little cups of the atlas. So if you think about this in your own body, did you all get that? Let's see if you can both look on this sheet, okay? I mean, okay, do you see this? The little bony protuberances of the skull rest on the grooves. Here, take that sheet away. Yeah, on the little cups or right of the atlas there. Isn't that nice? So it's a very like poised, balanced, floating kind of relationship. What I'd like to do now is demonstrate this with someone. Anyone? You want to? Okay. So just bring your chair here. And if I'm sitting in front of you and you can't see, then you can move yourself. Yeah. Or maybe you can see it in the mirror. Okay. Just face me. Yeah. Okay. So you're going to be the atlas. Okay. So your hands are. So your hands are those little grooves, the cups of the atlas, okay? And since they're kind of far away from each other, this is a big vertebra, okay? The atlas. Aptly named, sitting way up here. Your head rests on the atlas. Aptly named, right? The head. Again, this is between your ears, behind your eyes. So as I'm demonstrating this, as we're demonstrating this, try to really connect with this in your own body. Okay? Okay, so when you move your head this way, a little closer to it. When you move your head this way, the head rocks on the atlas. Way up there. And this is a joint. You know, so it's really good to remember that joints are places of movement. This is a joint. So when you move your head, when you nod your head yes, the head floats and rocks up on the atlas. Okay? The next vertebra is the axis, as we saw here. Right? The axis moves through the atlas. Okay? So it doesn't touch the bottom of the skull, and even though this piece here, the dens of axis, is higher than the atlas, is actually the top of the second vertebra. Okay? You all following this?
And it's not touching the skull.
No. And you can see in this photo, this picture, that it isn't touching the skull. It's pretty clear. So when you move your head this way, the atlas, and move your hands with me, the head this way, and the atlas rotate around the axis. So you're getting that sense? The axis moves too. Here. That's it.
I'm moving my head.
Yeah. Right. You're moving your head and keeping your hands.
Trying to get a feeling of it.
That's good. Okay. So do you have a little sense that this is a very poised, delicate relationship? Does that help? It's a little bit complicated to...
It works.
Yeah, it's a little complicated to get this across, but let's continue with this. Okay, so thank you. That was helpful. So what I'd like you to do for a moment, then put down the sheets unless they're still really of interest. And find your sense, a little bit sense of upright without working too hard at it. And it's fine with me if you shut your eyes to find this, but when I say to you, let your neck be free, let your head balance forward and up, and we'll talk about these words and what they mean. We were exploring this last class. What we're really after is this completely poised, weightless relationship of the head to the spine. And the head is heavy. It's anywhere from, whatever it is, 11, 12, 13 pounds, whatever it is. And the idea is that normally when when it's not poised or balanced at the height at the top of the spine, that weight then bears down into the spine and causes compression. So Judith, go more towards the front of your chair. Take your whole body forward. And what I mean is scoot your pelvis forward so you're not against the back. And even more, even more. Yep, even more. Okay, yeah. Okay. So, see if you could find that very, very easy, sort of weightless quality up here. Easy. Yeah. All right. So, what I'm going to do right now is take you I want to go back and forth again like we did last week. So Alexander called this particular pattern pulling the head back and down. And that is when the neck muscles constrict, they tug on the head and the head then bears back and down into the spine and causes a whole pattern of compression. So what he meant by those words is in relation to this place we were just looking at, this is back and down. That's it. Okay, so that's like a kind of slumpy place. Like when people slump, this is usually what happens, right? When people, that was a really good, you modeled that really well. Watch Judith for a minute. Do you mind? Go do that again. You see how when she pulls her head back and down, her whole spine just collapsed, right? So hold on 1 minute. I'm going to go over here and work with you. I'm just going to get in right here. Okay. So I'm going to say these words. I don't expect you to know what they mean right now, but what I'm doing right now is helping her out of that compression. Let your neck release. Let your head balance forward and up. Good. And do you see how she's growing? Can you all see that?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Finally.
Okay, and now Judith, go back to the other. Yes, okay. So we're just going back and forth so you can see the difference, okay? So again, this is what he called pulling the head back and down. Stay there for a minute, okay? Okay. Now the other thing is I'm going to ask you not to respond to my words when I'm helping you out of this. Just respond to the touch, okay? The words are defining or labeling the change, but don't go for the words, okay? So allow your neck to release. Don't go for it. Respond to my hands. Let your head bounce forward and up, and let your whole torso respond. That's very nice. Yeah. Okay. You see that? That was a big change. How did that feel to you?
Much better.
Yeah. So what I'd like you to do is feel the quality of this. So notice your breathing, notice your shoulders. Okay, and then again, go back. Okay, notice the quality of this. Not hard to do, right?
I
Again.
like the incredible lightness of being.
Don't help. Don't help. Don't help. Well, I'll show you. We'll talk about why I'm asking you not to help in a minute. Okay? Yes. That was nice. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're creating. What I'm doing with Judith is I'm asking her to go to her habit so she can feel it. And then I'm helping her get out of her habit. And that's producing some shift in her nervous system, in her neuro pathways, I guess you could say. Every time she gets out of her habit, she has an experience of something other than her habit. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? Pretty simple. So then I'm asking her to kind of consciously go back to your habit. Because in my experience, if you do that a few times, you get more experience of your habit. Does that make sense? Like if you just hang out here all the time, you don't know you're doing it. But if you can come out of it, then you have more awareness of it. Okay, so that's what was happening. Okay, so what I want to do is go around with each one of you and work with you the way I just was here. But did you hear that I said to her, don't respond to my words, respond to my touch. Because at this stage, you don't know what the words mean. So if you're trying to go for your concept of the words, you're probably going to not be going in the right direction. Does that make sense? So actually, when I asked her to stop responding to the words, I'm teaching her this concept of inhibition, which we're going to be talking about more and more here. In other words, she had to stop herself from a response she would normally have, which is to be helpful and to do what the teacher says, and right? To help it along. What?
Your model view.
Yeah. Okay, so can you see how stopping is very valuable? This is kind of a philosophical discussion, but let's get into it for a moment.